Rated M for mature.
Ain't that funny? Jack, he's a psychomaniac. That's right, it's Defo sight. It don't matter who's wrong or right. I just might catch you slipping. Getting paid is my intuition and my ambition. It's the city of the sea.
All right, welcome to PGTV. This is episode 5. We're in Sound Deluxe here in LA, and we're joined by Jack himself, Mr. Steve Blum.
Just Jack.
So you want me to kill that kid?
I merely want to know why you did not kill him.
Why? Do I need a reason not to kill someone?
Yeah. So, Jack actually has a last name.
I read that.
Yeah, so Jack Kamen.
Yeah.
Although I don't think very many people actually realize that he's got a last name because of that Jack line.
Well, he doesn't like anybody to know it, I guess, right?
So you've been a working voice actor for a really long time.
Yeah.
Started in anime, and now you're doing a lot of video games.
Yep.
How'd you get started?
I was an executive at a film company. Actually, even before that, I was a driver at a film company. Worked my way up and was just doing anime on the side, just for fun. Mm-hmm. And one of my buddies had actually contacted me and asked me if I'd be interested in ripping some limbs off of a monster in a monster voice. And I thought, fine. I get paid $7 a line to do it. And at that time, nobody really knew how the industry worked. So I just sort of jumped in and for the free food, and everybody sort of showed up at once, which they don't do it that way anymore either. And I just did it as kind of a fun thing to do one afternoon. Ended up booking 26 episodes on the show and got another show after that, and just kind of did it for fun on the side. Never expected it to become a career. And that was about 17 years ago. And we just haven't stopped since. So.
Back then, anime was really niche, though. I mean, was there a lot of work?
Yeah. No, there wasn't a lot of work, but we seemed to have a pretty steady stream. There was something always going on. And I was working with a company called LA Hero at the time. Mm-hmm. And there was really only one other company in town at that time. It was Streamline that was really doing all the anime. And none of us really knew how to do it. We didn't even know the process of recording. And we recorded our first show in a treehouse, literally, a treehouse studio, with a guy with a chainsaw buzzing outside the window. How ironic that is at this point. But yeah, there really wasn't that much anime happening. And the fans of anime have really grown up a lot since then, too. There were very few fans that would accept a dubbed show at that time.
They were hardcore anti-dubbing. I was just about to ask you that.
Yeah.
Back in the day, I mean, they were just completely against
it. It was pretty militant. I mean, I went to my first convention up in San Jose and had my life threatened a few times, and my family's life threatened for doing it. They didn't know what to make of it.
Do you think that was a problem with, like, the education of fans? Or because you get that a lot in games. Like,
yes.
A lot of times people in games, and being involved with localization myself, if you change just a little thing, they freak out. And a lot of people are, I want the Japanese voices. Well, the funny thing is that most of the times they really don't even understand the Japanese voices. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of like, even if the Japanese voice acting was bad, they would have no idea.
Right. But just because it's the original, pure essence of the game.
Yeah, exactly.
It's the purists will always be there, I think, in every genre. And they still are, but I think that it's just become so mainstream now, games and anime and every other media, that there's enough people that are accepting of it because that's what they were weaned on. So,
when did you think that they kind of made the jump to the idea that dubs are okay? Was it when you started getting like the theatrical dubs, like Princess Mononoke, where they started throwing a fair amount of money at the dubs to make them high quality?
Well, yeah, I think that certainly brought it out to a bigger audience. But from my experience, when I did Cowboy Bebop, that was really one of the first shows that I had worked on that seemed to grab a mainstream audience. It was really, a lot of people didn't know what to make of anime, and it was not a palatable thing for an American sensibility until a little bit later on. And that show seemed to be such a great crossover because it had so many American elements in it, and it sort of eased people into the process of listening to a dub show, I think. And I was really lucky to be part of that. It opened a lot of doors for me in a lot of areas.
You also moved into a lot of Western animation as well.
Yeah.
Was that kind of in sync with doing the Japanese anime, or did they come about after doing Japanese anime?
It came about many years later. Yeah, the original animation, was really, it's like anything else in entertainment. It just takes a long time to get established. And I never expected to do voiceover in the first place, so I didn't really expect to be able to break into that. And I had always heard that it was a very small community of people and very, very difficult to break into, and it is. But it just took a lot of years of just being around and doing stuff enough that casting directors would hear me, finally, and fans were accepting enough, so people started talking. And so that happened actually a lot later on in my career. I was probably doing anime for 10 years before I really made the jump into my first original animated show. Mm-hmm. I'd done a few games, and that helped the process too.
How'd you start getting involved with games?
It was sort of a natural transition for me. I don't remember what my first game was, but early on I started doing some stuff with LucasArts. Mm-hmm. And I think the Dig might have been my first one. Yeah, but the transition into games was just a natural thing for me, because especially the characters that I was chosen to play, for the most part, were tough guys or creatures or something that I had been doing for many years before in anime. And for me, it was actually a lot easier because I didn't have to match what was going on the screen. I just kind of barked it out, and they gave me a list of 400 lines and in and out. So.
Do you do primarily now, is most of your work in games, or are you still kind of a good mix of everything? Or?
It seems to be a really good mix of everything, and I like it that way. I like doing something different every day. And I think if I did just games, I would either be really bored or dead, just because they're so brutal, and I get hired for so many screaming roles and things that it's just physically too taxing to do that constantly.
How do you keep your voice in shape?
I don't have any more with me. My Chinese throat drops, I've got these little herbal throat drops, and I just pop those between lines, drink a lot of water and tea, and sleep. Basically, after working on a really hard game, I just have to lay down and get a full 8 to 10 hours of sleep to recuperate. And sometimes I can't work the next day, depending on the job. I'll have to push it a day or 2 or 3.
Do you find yourself working almost every day as a voice actor?
In the good times, yes. Yeah. And I hope, that's the way I like to keep it. I like to work every day. But when I'm doing big voiced projects like that, where I really have to get physical, then I do need some recuperation time. So just to have an instrument to use on the next job, I have to book time in between.
So one of the things that's really interesting for me, having worked with a lot of voice actors, mm-hmm. is that you kind of step into your roles very quickly. Mm-hmm. Like, it's still a bit of a black box to me as to how much information you know about your character before you step into the room.
Right.
I know that like an actor on a film or on a TV show will kind of live with their role for a little bit mm-hmm. before they'll get into the studio to film.
Right.
It doesn't seem that way with voice actors as much. It almost seems kind of like you step into the room and you're like, hey, this is who you are. Mm-hmm. This is your audition. This is what they liked in the voice. Go for it.
Yeah, it's all pretty much a cold read. I mean, I'd say about 90% of what I do is a cold read. And I think that's what keeps it fresh for me. That's what keeps it interesting. If I know too much, I start dissecting it and I start putting my opinions in there rather than listen to the director and the writers and the people that have actually lived with this stuff for 2 or 3 years in some cases. Mm-hmm. So, I'd rather just kind of come in cold and listen to what they have to say and work with that. And as far as establishing the character is concerned, that's become a natural thing after doing it for so many years. I can look at a model sheet of a character or listen to a sample of something and be able to lock onto it pretty quickly.
Do you find that because you step into the character so quickly that it's harder to remember the character, or like you step out of the character just as quickly?
Yeah.
Like I can imagine, Spike on Cowboy Bebop. You did so many episodes of that character kind of lives within you because you're so familiar with him. But like on a game or something.
Well, oddly enough, though, with Spike, we didn't work every day. We'd work maybe once a week, once every 2 or 3 weeks. And it was all new to us at that time. None of us had really had time to get familiar with the series yet. So even back then with Spike, I didn't really get familiar with Spike until the last few years when I finally got around to watching the whole series. And it's even, I know less about the characters with the games because literally I'm in and out in a day and I won't remember anything that I did on a game. And I'm not really much of a gamer, so I don't get to keep that character in my head. I don't get to keep it alive. So
does that make it kind of weird at conventions?
It does.
Someone kind of comes up to you and like, I loved it when you said this thing and this part of this scene.
Yeah.
And you're like, I said that?
Well, I do say that. The harder part is when they want me to mirror stuff back to them from games or from shows that they've memorized. And, you know, people that go to the conventions are passionate about this stuff, and they live and breathe it and memorize this stuff. And I have no idea what they're talking about half the time. Sometimes I don't even know the title of the show I've worked on. And, you know, we're signing these non-disclosure agreements, and sometimes they haven't even finalized a title, so I don't even know what I'm working on until after it comes out. And I won't have any information on it until the fans tell me. So I actually rely on them, and they've really become much more accepting of that over the years. They weren't so much so in the beginning. And
I can imagine they'd get really upset.
they got really upset, and they thought that I didn't care enough about it and whatever. But it's, you know, I'm working a different show, sometimes 3 shows in a day, so it's really hard for me to juggle all that in my head and keep any of it there. I just have to be able to move on.
You probably wouldn't be able to stay sane, too, if you had to
no.
live with all that stuff in your head.
Oh no, I'm schizophrenic enough, and having to have those characters, you know, stuck in there trying to bust their way out all the time would make my head explode, I think, at some point.
Before we move on to talking a little bit more specifically about Mad World,
Yeah.
this is something kind of I notice that guys do a lot,
Yeah.
even if they're not voice actors, but guys tend to, like, talk to themselves in voices sometimes around the house.
Oh yeah.
Do you ever do that?
I do that all the time, and I get caught all the time.
Do you go for like just original voices that kind of pop into your head, or are you doing voices of characters that you've done?
For me, I think it's just that I have so much going on all the time that I'm actually having conversations with myself, and not necessarily in character voices, but just conversations, just trying to work out stuff in my head that I don't have time to sit down and work out on paper or whatever. It can be about bills, it can be about, you know, what I'm going to have for lunch, and sometimes I'll just pop into a character, and it just happens to come out, and I don't even notice that I'm doing it until somebody points it out for me. And I have a lot of people in my life that like to do that. So.
And when they point it out, how's that conversation usually go?
Well, it depends on who it is. My girlfriend is pretty brutal. So she goes, "You dumbass," you know. That kind of reaction is what I get a lot from her. If it's kids or if it's my family members, they just kind of, you know, give me sort of a funny look, or they laugh along with me, or, you know, I'll just launch into something else, and it just becomes something from there. But around the house, I have a really kind of quiet lifestyle in the house, and it's just pretty much me and my girlfriend most of the time, and she'll pretty much say, "You're doing it again, you idiot." So
Can do what I do is I try to play a lot of games at home,
Yeah.
just to kind of stay up on my work stuff.
yeah.
And if my girlfriend complains, well, like, this is work, honey. This
Yeah.
is work.
Yeah. Well, it is. It's. I mean.
I used to get away with it.
Yeah. I mean, that's how I'm able to keep going the way I'm going, and she understands it. She's the one that keeps me humble. She's the one that keeps me down to earth, and she goes to conventions with me, and you know, after being in that environment where we become kind of pseudo celebrities for 2 or 3 days, I'm brought right back down to earth by, you know, one snappy comment from her, and it's like, oh, okay, this is where my real life lies.
Although that kind of stuff is fun, though, isn't it?
It's great. It's really great. Yeah. I mean, I'm living in a fantasy world for a good portion of my life. When I'm in the studio, I'm becoming these crazy characters, and I get to act out all of these impulses that I can't do in the real world, and that's amazing. And then going to a convention and being amongst 50,000 people that are in costume and living out these fantasies within the real world, it's surreal. It's crazy. But it's really, really fun. It's like going to the circus. It's like living in the circus.
So, speaking of crazy impulses and things you can't do in the real world, you played Jack in Mad World for us.
Yeah.
Rules. Is there any rule here but kill or be killed? Look, if wasting a few doctors is gonna up my pay, I'm happy to do it.
I think that your Jack was awesome.
Oh, thanks,
Like, it
man.
really brought the Jack that was on the page to life.
Oh, cool. Thank you.
How was it working with the director, Jack Fletcher? You've told me previously that you've worked with him before,
Yeah.
and he's done tons of games.
Mm-hmm.
What's he like as a director? Like, how did he bring Jack out of you?
I love Jack. He's just a really understated expert at what he does. He doesn't really need to say that much. I mean, I've worked with him enough where he can kind of give me an inclination of what he's going for, and it just sets right in. It really doesn't take a whole lot. I would say my sessions with him are easy. It's just a very organic process working with him. He's just so knowledgeable. He reads up on the projects. He knows what's going on. and he's got a very clear, concise directorial style, and so it's just an easy, simple thing to do with him.
It's kind of, you know, asking you to go back to probably just a couple of days of sessions, but kind of how did you approach the character of Jack with Jack Fletcher's direction?
Well, like we were saying before, I really don't remember a whole lot about it, except that it was actually a little understated from what my original expectation was of the character because of the nature of it and the violence that was going on. I really expected there to be a lot more screaming and high volume, high energy type of delivery.
Of course, like Polo, with chainsaws.
And Jack really kind of reined that in and kept the guy very controlled. So physically, it was actually a lot easier to do that character, but we had to get the intent out through a lower volume delivery, and that's a more difficult thing to do acting-wise. So it was an interesting mix in there, and I just had to rely on Jack's knowledge of the game to guide me through those areas where I was so unsure, because I really had no idea what I was getting myself into when I did that.
Yeah. How was your reaction to seeing video of the game?
Well, I didn't see that until just a couple days ago, really, and it was a little shocking. Actually, it was really shocking, visceral, and really interesting style, though. I love the black and white with the splashes of red throughout. I mean, it was something I hadn't seen before, and a lot more violent than I had even expected. I mean, he described it to me. I remember him describing it to me in the studio, but nothing compared to what ended up on the screen. Really amazing, really amazing.
We wouldn't want to lose you too, just because Game Control deemed you suspicious.
I thought I meant something to you, and now I find out it's just about the money. I feel so dirty.
Just to wrap up, a couple final questions, but you don't have to say Jack, obviously, but what are some of your favorite roles that you've worked on? Things that stick out as, like, if you were going to hand somebody your demo reel,
Yeah.
like, these are the roles that you want them to listen to.
Well, besides Jack, I would say Spike from Cowboy Bebop for sure, Wolverine, Yankee Doodle. I did that for Harvey Birdman. That was really big fun for me because it was a character I loved as a kid. A lot of the Digimon characters. I was Guilmon in one of the seasons of Digimon. It was great just because it was something completely different. And there's a character called Liron in an anime called Gurren Lagann, and complete departure from anything else I had ever done. So this week, those are my favorites, but they're all like my kids. You know, every character I've done represents a piece of where I am at that moment in my life, and so to say that one is favored over the others is inaccurate, I think, and it changes from week to week. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of all the games I've worked on. Like, it kind of just it depends on how I'm feeling that week as
Exactly.
to which one is the favorite one that I've ever worked on.
Yeah.
The last thing I wanted to ask you is kind of to give people an insight more into, like, voice actors and, like, maybe something that upsets you or something that people don't understand about voice actors that you wish that they did understand. And that, you know, if they understood this, it would be easier to have a conversation with somebody, or maybe they wouldn't get so upset over certain things. Like, is there anything that, like, God, you read something on the internet and you're like, God, I wish you understood.
Well, you know, the funny thing is that good, bad, and otherwise, the comments that show up on the internet, I love it all, and I am as amused by the awful comments as I am by the good ones, and the fact that people are actually tuning in and playing the games that I'm working on and watching the stuff that I do, whatever their opinion is of me or the product, they're paying attention, and they're the reason that I have a job. So for me, it all just boils down to gratitude. I sit and I laugh and I do surf every now and then and I check it out. There's really nothing that pisses me off about reactions to what I do, except back in the old days when people just weren't willing to give dubbed animation a chance. That was a little annoying. And then the only other thing that I would say is that people way overestimate the celebrity and power and money that voice actors have, and it's just a whole different kind of world. And the one thing I would say is I wish that the working voice actors would get more recognition as opposed to the celebrities. Because when they do have sort of awards things or people that are recognized for different things, it always seems to go to the on-camera celebrities. And there's so many of us grunts out there that are just knocking it out every day. And you know, we go to conventions and we do have our forum for it. But just to be recognized in entertainment like everybody else is would be kind of nice.
I think yourself, John DiMaggio, Fred Tatasciore is another one of my favorite voice actors that I don't think anybody knows who these guys are.
Amazing that they don't.
But they're so, I mean, they're amazing voice actors. I mean, the fact that, you know, Fred does Baird in Gears of War and then turns around and does all the Locust voice.
Yeah.
And
the Incredible Hulk.
Knows.
I mean, it's amazing that people don't know that he's the Hulk.
Yeah.
But, that's, in a way, I guess it's good because we maintain our anonymity, and I do like that. I like being able to walk out in the street and nobody has any idea of who I am unless I'm at a convention or something. So that's the one plus side that I would say. But it would be nice to see people like Fred and John and Tom Kenny and some of these guys actually receive awards for the incredible work they've done for so many years. It's just shocking to me that they're not given more recognition for that kind of work.
But don't you think your audience would rather see me paint the sidewalks red with someone my own size?
Of course, you are an artist, Jack. Go out and make us happy. Make your fans happy.
I aim to please.
Well, the last request is, can we get a little Jack from you before we end up the show?
Yeah. Anything particular?
I leave it up to you.
Oh, you gave me a line earlier.
I do. Personally, my favorite line in the script is, "I don't help people.
I was
kill
just
them."
going to give you that one. Okay. I don't help people. I kill them.
All right, everyone. Thank you for watching. Thank you very much, Steve, for showing up and
Thank you, man.
taking time to sit down and talk with me.
Pleasure meeting you.
I really loved Jack, and I love lots of the work that you do.
Thank you.
And you know, Wolverine, Spike, the work speaks for itself.
Thanks, man.
Thanks very much.
Thanks for the bloody words. I appreciate it. Domigato.